Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas it is provided by Section 63(1)(a) of the Public Finance Management Act No. 14 of 2020, the Act, that the Minister of Finance may, by an affirmative resolution of Parliament, borrow from a bank or other financial institution for the capital or current expenditure of governments. And whereas it is further provided by Section 64 of the Act that money borrowed by the government must be paid into and from and form part of the consolidated fund. And whereas the Minister of Finance considers it necessary to borrow an amount of US $10 million from the Export-Import Bank of the Republic of China to finance the implementation of national development projects and initiatives. And whereas the loan is repayable in 30 consecutive equal or as nearly equal as possible semi-annual installments, the first of which must be made on the last day of the 66th month from the date the first advance under the loan is made by the Export-Import Bank of the Republic of China, and thereafter on the last day of each successive 6-month period. And whereas, if the full amount of the loan has been drawn down, each principal installment must be in the amount of US $333,334, except that the last principal installment must be in the amount of US $333,314. Otherwise, the amount of each installment shall be adjusted by the Export-Import Bank of the Republic of China. And whereas interest is payable at the rate of the 6-month secured overnight financing rate plus 0.20% plus 1.5% per annum. And whereas the loan is repayable in 20 years, commencing from the date of first disbursement of the loan, inclusive of a grace period of 5 years. Be it resolved that the Parliament authorizes the Minister of Finance to borrow the amount of US $10 million from the Export-Import Bank of the Republic of China to finance the implementation of national development projects and initiatives. And be it further resolved that the loan is repayable in 30 consecutive equal or as nearly equal as possible semi-annual installments, the first of which must be made on the last day of the 66th month from the date the first advance under the loan is made by the Export-Import Bank of the Republic of China, and thereafter on the last day of each successful 6-month period. If the full amount of the loan has been drawn down, each principal installment must be in the amount of US $343,334, except that the last principal installment must be in the amount of US $333,314. Otherwise, the amount of each installment shall be adjusted by the Export-Import Bank of the Republic of China. Interest is payable at a rate of 6-month secured overnight financing rate plus 0.20% plus 1.5% per annum. The loan is repayable in 20 years, commencing from the date of first disbursement of the loan, inclusive of a grace period of 5 years. Mr. Speaker, as the resolution states, this loan is being taken from the Republic of China on Taiwan, from the Export-Import Bank, to finance the following projects. And these projects, Mr. Speaker, have been outlined in my budget statement delivered on the 26th of April. The expansion of craft and CMOS and the CMOS subsectors. $500,000, Mr. Speaker, will be used for the expansion of the craft and CMOS subsectors. Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia has been doing very well in the production of CMOS for exports, and we want to increase the value of the product so we can add value to the raw CMOS. And with the support of Export St. Lucia and the Ministry of Agriculture, that work is being done so that we can increase foreign exchange and increase our exports of CMOS at a higher value. And Mr. Speaker, it's the craft, Mr. Speaker. The St. Lucia again has been producing some very, very, very attractive pieces of craft, particularly from Choiseul, and that loan will be used to uplift the craft center and to uplift the production of craft. Again, causing the people of St. Lucia to get involved in the development of the country. Paying attention to the people, the regular people, the farmers, the CMOS farmers, and the craft vendors and the craft people in Choiseul, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, $7.2 million of that loan will be used for the Youth Economy Program. And as you know, in the budget, we allocated $10 million for the Youth Economy Project, and in your on the paper, Mr. Speaker, you will see the Youth Economy Agency Bill, which is going to be discussed, debated in this honorable House, Mr. Speaker. So this money is actually the starting of the youth economy, which we've spoken so much about and which has garnered a lot of interest, both in St. Lucia. 7.2 million EC, yeah, because it's $10 million for the project. 10 million EC. The allocation is, huh? Okay, let me explain to you again. For the craft and CMOS, you can add it up, it's $500,000. Agreed? EC. For the youth economy, it's 7.2 million EC. Right? Then we go now to the other section where we are going to be using $200,000 EC for the National Competitiveness Agenda. That is to seed money to create a partnership with the Complete Caribbean Partnership Facility, which was able to formulate a national competitiveness agenda and a draft innovation policy. You know, we've got to make St. Lucia more competitive. We've got to make St. Lucia be able to compete in the global world. So we're using $200,000 from that money to spend to create that level to upgrade the level of competition in St. Lucia so we can compete in the real world. So $200,000 being used for that, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, then we are going to use from that money $4 million for the Millennium Highway West Coast Road project. And the truth is, Mr. Speaker, I'm not very happy with the way that project is progressing. This project, we will have to look into why a contract has been signed almost a year, and then more than a year, Mr. Speaker, 2 years. And as we said, the last government decided that they would have used the money from the British for the West Coast Road. We thought it was their prerogative and we supported. But this project is very, very slow, Mr. Speaker. It ought to be a free stage. It ought to be the road ought to be constructed in 3 stages. Stage 1, a contract has been awarded, and the work on stage 1, Mr. Speaker, is almost non-existent. And I think the Ministry of Infrastructure will have to look into why is that road taking so much time? So the government's contribution, because it's $4 million, and we're going to get $4 million from that $26 million or $10 million US from the Taiwanese, Mr. Speaker. And $3.4 million of that money is going to be used for the street lighting replacement project to augment what is there already, because we need to change every light in this country to save. This basically is what the money is going to be used for. It's a loan from the government of the Republic of China on Taiwan. And the terms, I read the terms, Mr. Speaker, repayable after 20 years, and each installment of $333,000 US, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, anytime we come to this honorable house to borrow, the borrowing is for something productive, and the people of St. Lucia, there's full disclosure. There is no there is full disclosure, Mr. Speaker. We are not going to be hiding, Mr. Speaker, because we know that when we borrow, the money that we borrow is going to be used for the benefit of the people of St. Lucia. There's going to be transparency and there's going to be accountability. So there can be, so we are not ashamed, nor are we going to hide or deflect, Mr. Speaker, on the truth. Fact is, we always said that it is necessary for governments to borrow. But what we also said is that you must borrow for purposes that are necessary. The borrowing must be responsible, Mr. Speaker. The borrowing ought not to give direct awards to your friends. The borrowing ought to be responsible borrowing. So we are not going to be, so anybody who feels that they can throw us on the back foot by creating an environment of fear, Mr. Speaker. The Minister for Commerce told you the situation. No government has had to operate in the environment under which we are operating. No government, Mr. Speaker. No government. There's never been a time in this country when no government, Mr. Speaker. There's never been a time in St. Lucia when the returns from the gas tax was ever so low. Never in the time in history of St. Lucia. It was so good at the time, they increased it by $1.50. There's never been a time, Mr. Speaker, even in the height of the COVID crisis, we've never had a time, never, when the returns from the gas tax was so low, Mr. Speaker. So we and the people of St. Lucia have understood, and the people of St. Lucia will understand, Mr. Speaker, that what is necessary, and this government will not shy in its responsibility to do what is right for the people of St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, there are times in the life of a country where men of goodwill ought to forget differences, speak the truth, give advice, give counsel, criticize when necessary, and see what is happening in the world, Mr. Speaker. Have a look at what's happening in the world. Well, Mr. Speaker, when you are consumed with anger and envy and entitlement, and you believe that you have a right to something that has been taken away from you, Mr. Speaker, you behave in ways that are unimaginable. Happens all over the world. Boris Johnson believes that because he was wealthy, he went to Eton, he was a member of a club called the Bullington, that he could do whatever he wanted. He had to be prime minister. He would lie, he would deflect. Boris Johnson is a typical example, Mr. Speaker, of people who think they are entitled. Donald Trump lost an election, wants his vice president to go to the Electoral College and create mayhem just because he lost the election, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, these people in world history, they end in one way, Mr. Speaker. Just one way. So, Mr. Speaker, right now we are in a situation where the entire world is in chaos. The entire world. Inflation at its highest for 40 years. People are predicting starvation. People are saying that this generation is going to be worse off than the last generation. I heard last night that the Omicron virus is rapid in the United States. Every other person in the United States is said will catch the Omicron virus, Mr. Speaker. That's the world we're living in. The world of climate change, where, as we speak, England is in a heat wave that will cost lives. Floods in Australia, floods in India, and England in a heat wave, Mr. Speaker. That's the world we live in. That's the world we live in, Mr. Speaker. So we would expect that people who have a concern or genuine interest in the country would pull back a little bit. Pull back, Mr. Pull back. Let's pull back a little bit. Let's wait. Let's see how we'll come through this crisis. But no, we make political mileage with a poor Calypsonian who was injured. And I saw something I don't follow Facebook, I don't. But I saw something on a page, Mr. Speaker. If on a Facebook page, Mr. Speaker, and I hear lies, open lies, things that are not true, things that are proven to be not true, Mr. Speaker, being spouted every day, Mr. Speaker. Every day I hear on a radio station lies, just lies, Mr. Speaker. Just things that I sometimes wonder where are these things coming from, Mr. Speaker? The Ministry of Trade, the Minister of Commerce has told you the price of flour. That's not our cause. We didn't do that. We didn't cause a war in Ukraine, Mr. Speaker. That's reality. We are arguing on the fact that fuel is $100 and something per barrel. We want to argue that right now the revenue from fuel products is less than it ever was before. We want to argue that. That's a fact. But you still want to argue. You want to argue that still? That's reality, Mr. Speaker. And you want to argue so much, Mr. Speaker, that you argue things that are, Mr. Speaker, I just have to don't say what I want to say. But Mr. Speaker, you heard the leader of the opposition come here and said to you that he had $10 million for St. Jude. The money from the Exim Bank was for St. Jude, Mr. Speaker. And I really feel sorry for the technocrats who worked with the Minister for Finance. I feel sorry for them. I feel sorry for them because if I were in their place and I would see somebody stand up and he said that's completely not true, I'd be able to say something. But they are professionals, so they say nothing. Mr. Speaker, let me tell you how the $10 million had to be spent by this leader of the opposition. And why we had to repurpose it, Mr. Speaker. That was the $10 million he had for election purposes. That was the $10 million he had. Construction, rehabilitation of concrete roads and drains to include general infrastructure, utility retaining walls, fabrication of rails and handicap access, repairs and renovations to courts, parks and community facilities. He had in that $14 million, Mr. Speaker, for election purposes. And he was afraid to come to this honorable house because he was afraid to come to Borough because he knew if he had come, he would have got stiff opposition, Mr. Speaker. So he backfired on that. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, here's how he spent that money. He spent that money, Mr. Speaker, he proposed to spend it, Mr. Speaker, he proposed to spend it on geothermal study for police headquarters, designs for police headquarters, site preparations for police headquarters, and importation of 1,000 LED lights. And he comes here, Mr. Speaker, stands on his 2 feet that God gave him, and says that money was for St. Jude. Boris. Mr. Speaker, Boris Johnson could not do so badly. He comes and he stands and he says that when he knows very well that information is available. Mr. Speaker, then he says that none of these projects were in the budget. Mr. Speaker, Agency number 42, Commerce, Promotion of Indigenous Craft and CMOS, new project, $500,000. Estimates page 613. Budget speech page 33 and 29. Infrastructure, Millennium Highway West Coast Road upgrade, ongoing project, $4 million. Estimates page 615, budget page 17. Finance, agency number 44, National Competitive Agenda, ongoing, $200,000. Estimates page 618. Health, agency number 53, COVID response and CDB COVID intervention, Inter-American Development Bank, Global Loan Program, ongoing, $11,522.62. Estimates page 643, budget page 42 and 43. Economic Development, agency number 56, Street Lighting Replacement Project, new project, $3.4 million. Estimates page 640, budget page 37. Agency number 56, Economic Development, Economic Recovery and Empowerment of Youth, the Youth Economy, new project, $7.2 million. Estimates page 641, $26,882. And he stands with the speaker. He knows that very well. Until he got the letter from his party to summon him here. If not, they told him to suffer the consequences, so he came here today. So he came out today, Mr. Speaker, and he comes, Mr. Speaker, and in his Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition says that we should negotiate with the Taiwanese to cap the interest rate and resilience clauses. You think a man can stand up and say that? He negotiated it. We had to repurpose it. There's a letter on the file from the Taiwanese saying why we ought to repurpose. We had to make a case, the poor technocrats in the ministry. Not me. You can ask them. I don't deal, this Minister of Finance, I don't deal with my technocrats like you know. I ask them for policy direction, and I reserve the right to take the path that I want based on the policies that they give me. But I don't go to the airport and tell them where to put terminal building, costing the country $43 million in cost overruns. I don't interfere with SLASPA and write them and tell them to give a direct award to somebody. You must do it. I don't do it, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, so when he comes and talks about capping the interest rates and resilience clauses, he knows very well that the loan that he negotiated, he knows very well. I can sit and ask you to say, and I say it's not true.
On his offer, Mr. Speaker, there is no letter that instructs.
Hold on, member. The member for Castries East does not have authority to give anybody else authority to speak in the House. You go through the presiding officer. If you wish to rise on a point of elucidation.
There is a letter he wrote to SLASPA,
Mr. Speaker,
telling him to give a direct award for the award.
Leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order, on a point of elucidation, if the member will allow me.
Are you yielding, member for Castries East? Are you yielding?
No.
So you invite me, and then you don't lead it.
Mr. Speaker, I'll say it again. There is a letter that he wrote to SLASPA telling them to give the direct award to the airport to a particular person. Say that's not true.
That's not true, Mr. Speaker, on a point of elucidation, because he seems to be giving orders. He said he doesn't give
members. The member for Castries.
I see him ordering you all around.
Leader of opposition, the member for Castries can give every indication he wishes. There is only one sheriff in this House. I am the only person who shall call upon somebody else to speak, and you shall not take directions from the leader of government. If you're taking directions from him, if he stands up and asks you to sit down, are you going to ask me to intervene?
Mr. Speaker.
No, are you going to ask me to intervene if he asks you to sit?
I'm going to simply ask you if I could make rise on a point of order, on a point of elucidation for the second time.
You can rise on a point of order. The point of elucidation is entirely up to him.
Correct.
What is your point of order?
On point of hallucination.
No, that's not a point of elucidation.
How is that not a point of order, Mr. Speaker?
Do you, Member for Castries East, do you yield to allow him to make a point? He wants to make a point of elucidation. Are you yielding?
On what?
What is, on which?
His claim that I wrote a letter to Slasco.
Yes, he did right. He wrote it, that's right.
So you're not
I know
yielding.
that very well.
Okay, proceed, leader.
So you're not giving me permission again. So you invite me and you don't give me permission again.
But member, leader of the opposition, if
Mr. Speaker.
just a point of the member, if the leader, the prime minister, has made a point that you wrote a letter, there is no elucidation on that. You either deny or you cannot elucidate on that.
Mr. Speaker, the member.
Member, leader of the
from
opposition,
Castries.
he did not yield. I'm merely giving you directions.
I understand.
That if somebody has made.
I'm asking for hallucination from you, Mr. Speaker.
Hold a minute. Listen, let's get something clear. Debate takes place among members. Nobody in this house debates with the speaker. The speaker has the chair, he speaks. If a member has accused you of doing something, you do not clarify that. You either deny or you accept. There is no clarification on that. It is open to you to bring information at the next sitting, or you can go boldly and say to the Minister of Finance to make that a document of the House.
He's so quiet, he says. Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Finance Minister, to settle this matter, are you prepared to make that letter a document of the House?
When I speak to my colleagues, we'll decide. We will have a lot more to come. And there's a lot more on the airport, Mr. Speaker. I don't want to jeopardize the way forward. So I will decide, with our discussion with my colleagues, whether I will make that letter already, because we might need that letter for other purposes. So, Mr. Speaker, he speaks about the $10 million for St. Jude. And I want him to deny it. I have outlined how he would spend the money and how we have to write the Taiwanese to ask them to repurpose that $10 million. And he wants a letter, Mr. Speaker. You don't instruct me when to bring letters in the House. Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition, Mr. Speaker, speaks about the National Economic Fund. And he says that we've made it a slush fund. Here's what we did. We had one amendment to the National Economic Fund. One. We said in that amendment that the cabinet can give instructions to the National Economic Fund. That's all we said. Now, Mr. Speaker, but look at, let me explain to you what that means. The government, the cabinet controls the consolidated fund. All the revenues of the country is under the control of the cabinet and the parliament, Mr. Speaker. So how can you say to the cabinet, if there's not an ulterior motive in your intention, how can you say to the cabinet, to the parliament is the one that passes the consolidated fund? How you can say to them there's one part of the proceeds of the country that they can't manage? So we said no. We said that the National Economic Fund will follow the directives if cabinet gives it the directives, Mr. Speaker. That's all we said. So when it comes to talk about it was a lockbox and it was a sovereign wealth fund, Mr. Speaker, he paid a lawyer to do work on a sovereign wealth fund, and up to today we can't get one document on any sovereign wealth fund, Mr. Speaker. Not one document, and we paid the lawyer.
That's true.
Mr. Speaker, because we have kept quiet, we have allowed them to go on masquerade. We haven't said anything, Mr. Speaker. Because, Mr. Speaker, my objective is to serve the people of St. Lucia, not to make political points, Mr. Speaker. We could come here. We have enough information, some of which that they've hidden. Every day, everything they say, we can show what they did, how they did it, and how they did it, what in the best interest of St. Lucia. But we don't have time for that. These men and women there, we have to sit and deal. This time is the most difficult time to be in government ever. What we doing if now, Mr. Speaker? We don't have time to halekase we don't got time to halekase with Boris Johnson to be lookalikes. Mr. Speaker, so when it comes to talk about sovereign wealth fund, he must tell the taxpayers of this country, why did they pay a lawyer? Plus all the money they paid to prosecute him, criminal offenses against him, minister's account. And the former prime minister, all the money they paid to lawyers, he must come and tell the public where did that money go and where the sovereign wealth fund. You don't come and talk about National Economic Fund was supposed to be sovereign wealth fund.
5 years ago.
And you know, no sovereign wealth fund. But again, that's it. Just say things. Just saying things. Then he comes to talk about St. Jude. St. Jude costs $100 million. And in 80 cents? Yeah, and then he needed another 30 to finish it. Mr. Speaker.
They signed a contract for 70 million.
Mr. Speaker, I mean, Mr. Speaker, you know, these things, that's the same gentleman, leader of the opposition, who he knows very well. In the middle of July, there was a request for a direct award for $70 million, plus one that was there before for $33 million. The one for 70, the Ministry of Economic Development say, send it to the Attorney General. The one, he said that one was too hot to handle, send that one, and that was in the middle of July. And the Attorney General has it up to now, Mr. Speaker. $70 million extra, apart from the one he had signed for $43 million before. That's $103 million, Mr. Speaker, to complete. And he had already spent $118 million on that box. So, yes, you spent $118 million on the box. Probably you weren't aware. $118 million. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, that $70 million, Mr. Speaker, the Attorney General has it in his office today, up to today, and I bought it this honorable some time ago, to build the ground floor of a hospital, the ground floor alone. Mr. Speaker, how you expect to build a ground floor of a hospital and people? You working upstairs and people sit downstairs. Does that make sense? Mr. Speaker, but Mr. Speaker, there was a oil report, and the oil report said that the buildings could be used for the original purpose, which is the hospital. They refused to bring that report in the public. Mr. Speaker, let me tell you something. Any report that we make, any time you use that taxpayers' money to do anything, you're going to bring it in the public domain. Is it? You're going to bring it. So, Mr. Speaker, then he speaks about investors. He spent 5 years in government, and as the Minister for Education says, he did not get a plywood partition in a hotel. Not one. He was Minister of Tourism. He didn't build one hotel in St. Lucia. Not one. He was Minister of Tourism. He was Prime Minister. He did not build one hotel in St. Lucia. Not one. And that was before COVID. But he rented a tent for $3 million. Not one hotel. Mr. Speaker, when I was Minister for Tourism, and I'd like to boast. You want me to talk about hotels that built under me? And now I'm back, and 2 hotels have started in this country. 2 of them. And go and sit. And you don't like it, Mr. Speaker? What are you going to do? Mr. Speaker, then he talks about hotels, Mr. Speaker. Ensure that, Mr. Speaker, next week we are going to send you. I know you'll be happy for that. You'll be very happy because we're getting that hotel built that they made a mess with. We're doing it for you. You all. I know for you. Probably weren't there, but a mess is very different. But you know why? Tell something. Let me tell you what investors tell us. Investors tell us it is refreshing to deal with us. They say that it's the air, it's a breath of fresh air. They say they're no longer told which lawyer to go to. They say they're no longer told if you go to this lawyer, you're not going to get anything. They are told they're no longer, that's what they tell us. They say to us, when we're dealing with us, it's a breath of fresh air. And that is why a number of new investments, including new hotels, will commence in St. Lucia before this term of office is over. Because of our transparency, because of our accountability, and because of the fact that there is no minister who is super to the Prime Minister. There is no minister who is the bag carrier for the Prime Minister.
That's a very telling statement.
Mr. Speaker, then he speaks about street lights. This is the same government. When we came into power, there was a loan from the Caribbean Development Bank for $9 million to convert the sodium lights into LED. This loan was approved by the president of the Caribbean Development Bank. A loan component and a grant component. $9 million. He stopped it. He stopped it. I mean, this guy, Boris, he stopped it. And he went to some arrangement. That's 5 years. It never came true. Right now, we have renegotiated, and then the street light project is going to continue, and that is our component. But he complains about it. This is the same Minister of Finance who in 2019, when the COVID crisis hit, the documents will tell you that the St. Lucian economy was the worst hit because it was the worst prepared. It was the worst hit because it was the worst prepared. The economy was already in decline in 2019. He inherited surpluses. In 2016, he inherited surpluses. By the time we were in 2019, the country was already suffering from massive deficits because of his lavish spending, Mr. Speaker. And there's something these are factual. So, Mr. Speaker, when we come to this honorable house, and as I said before, we're going to be spending all our time saying what you do, what you say, what you do, Mr. Speaker. But we're not doing it because each man, woman in this honorable house is dedicated to put our people first. They're dedicated to the fact that we have to reverse what's happening in this country. We have to get these people. Look at when you see, Mr. Speaker, what's happening in this country. There is a new bus. The member for Castries North had an exhibition for young people in La Clery. The number of young entrepreneurs who showing that level of wanting to do something, Mr. Speaker. And then what you do? You castigate the youth economy. You castigate it. You say there's $5 million in the youth economy for administrative purposes. You are going to see the bill. You should read a little more before you talk. The bill says, Mr. Speaker, the bill says, I'm not going to that now. Anyhow, the time will come for that, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition has once more failed the people of St. Lucia. He failed them as a Prime Minister, and now he's failing them even more as leader of the opposition. Because he's offering no guidance, he's offering no advice, he's offering nothing constructive in this crisis times, Mr. Speaker. And only what he hopes to do is to come here with flashing mirrors, come and deflect, come and say all kinds of things. He knows it's not true. And when you prove this is not true, he's shameless. Mr. Speaker, I to thank the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank them because they are experiencing now things that are beyond their control. I heard the member for Microsoft say that government should reduce import duties. You think the member doesn't know that we are operating under a CET? A common external tariff? You think he doesn't know that? You think he doesn't know to get derogation we have to go to quoted, we have to get it from all other states in the region? You think he doesn't know that? But because he knows that people are under pressure, he says that. And his surrogates behind, yes, yeah. He said, repeat it. You think he doesn't know that? You think he doesn't know? You think he doesn't know, Mr. Speaker, that our revenue from petrol is the lowest that's ever been? You think he doesn't know that? You think he doesn't know that, Mr. Speaker, that when he came into government, he increased the taxes on fuel by 150 to pay the roads that he built? And you think he doesn't know that we're not getting any 150 again to repay these loans? Think he doesn't know that? Think he doesn't know that? But Mr. Speaker, he hasn't got the fortitude. He hasn't got the love for people. He hasn't got the love for country. He hasn't got the desire to see people, St. Lucia, get better. To say to St. Lucians, let us hold on together. Let's hold on for now. Things are tough. Let's hold on. The government made a mistake. If the government made a mistake, pull the government up. Let's hold on because things are tough, Mr. Speaker. But the people of St. Lucia know better. And the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, will stand by this government because they know that we put them first, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.